What is good, YouTube? Quinn Wade basketball analysis. We're gonna do it different this year. We're gonna talk about everything that went down in the NBA free agency today. And usually I do them in their own separate individual videos, but I'm bigger, don't have as much time, and I rather just clear everything out into like one big podcast and just put it up on YouTube, and you guys can pretty much enjoy it and get what I think about every move that happened um, that day. So one of the biggest trades, obviously, is Victor Oladipo finally going to Miami. This is where he wanted to be. He's been rumored to go there for a long period of time, and they still do have Duncan Robinson. They still do have Tyler Hero. They still do have Bam Adebayo. They still do have Jimmy Butler and Gordon Dragic and those guys. So it's going to cost them a lot of money to keep them. But this is the piece that they feel like can take them over the hump. They will trade Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, and a pick swap in 22. Not really giving up too much. Victor Oladipo hasn't really played that well so far this season, which has been unfortunate because he was a two-time All-Star back-to-back and hasn't been able to get the form. But Miami is currently a playoff team. That's something that Houston and the Pacers are not. And they just was in the NBA Finals, and I know they've been on a little bit of a skid, but Oladipo is a hard worker. He showed that becoming an all-star late in his career, also being one of the best defenders at the guard position, having athleticism, mobility, and size to play the position. Definitely is a solid playmaker, a guy that can get hot, a guy that can take over games from time to time when the jump shot is falling. Doesn't add the greatest space, but that's why you have other shooters on this team that's their job to do. You people was thinking, why would the Heat make this deal? Is to be better. Like this team has lost a little bit of a step from how they was playing in the finals and in the playoffs, but you have to continue to add talent if you want to increase your chance of winning the title. And outside of Kyle Lowry, who the Heat also was rumored to get, they got the best player available when it comes to name. And they didn't give up really much, but a bunch of role players that didn't really fit, didn't really play well with them. Kelly Olynyk was a little bit of a move, but he hasn't been a mainstay with this team. They had guys already that play similar roles or are better defenders or can do something that he already brings to the table. So they're not going to miss him as much, but he still was a good piece. But the salaries added up, and that's why they had to do it. Plus, they didn't have to give up too much draft stock either to get a guy like Oladipo. So waiting for him did make sense because one, you didn't give up much. Two, the things you gave up didn't matter as much when it comes to what Oladipo can bring to the table. And Oladipo is a guy just like Dragic that can play both guard positions. He can handle the ball and make plays while also playing off the ball, and also still is probably the second, third best defender on his team behind Bam and Jimmy. And that's an upgrade at that spot. And that's something that Tyler Hero hasn't been able to do at a consistent level. And that's something that Oladipo, at worst, can still do when you think about the things that he brings to the table. When you look at the Rockets' perspective, they pretty much got a decent haul for Oladipo for what he was worth. And when you look at the grand scheme of the Houston Rockets trading James Harden, it didn't look like much on paper compared to the fact that you're getting rid of a superstar, a guy that got you to the Western Conference Finals twice and a game away from being in the NBA Finals. But they team don't look as bad just because they have a lot of picks. They have some guys that have some potential, and they also have some guys that play well as role players or play well with others that can complement other players depending on how you want to build this roster in the future. So they still do have to figure out what they want to do with John Wall. As you know, he has a huge contract and not too many teams can take it or want it. And he is still showing that he can be a solid starter in this league. He might not be a superstar, but he still is a guy that can get you double digit points. He can still defend at a decent, solid level. He is still a great playmaker for his position. And that's something that he hasn't changed since he's been in the league day one. Um, Another big thing that I will talk about um, is that LaMarcus Aldridge is considering also to go to the Heat. So they do get that big that can space the floor and defend to a certain extent, rebound and knock down shots. He is an upgrade to me over Kelly Olynyk, honestly, but this isn't a long-term commitment either. So it's not like they're going to be paying LaMarcus Aldridge a buttload of money. He's going to be basically bought out and getting paid nothing to basically play for the Miami Heat. So he isn't the same Aldridge, but he still is a starting caliber player. And even if he comes off the bench, you're not going to really complain about that. The next one, the New Orleans have agreed to trade J.J. Redick and Nico Melli to the Dallas Mavericks for James Johnson, Wes Awandu, and a second-round pick. Redick was a buyout candidate if he wasn't traded, so the Mavericks do get that extra shooting that they needed, and they got rid of a bunch of players that they really didn't, need or didn't play well with them. And even though they did, um, have to give up the second round pick, you rather have JJ Redick just because this is a lights out shooter that demands a lot of attention. Not the greatest defender, but he has added a little bit to his game. He didn't really fit what the Pelicans was trying to do on offense. Didn't really fit with the Pelicans in general. And we know how great Rick Carlisle is at getting the best out of spacing and getting the best out of shooters, and they love playing in Dallas because he finds ways because they have Luka Doncic, a guy that's unselfish, pass first type of guy, and if you can shoot the ball like Trey Burke or Tim Hardaway, you're gonna have a field day in Dallas, kind of like playing in Houston with James Harden. To compare it to something, and JJ Redick will be needed on this team as they have lacked a little bit of a punch and they have lacked some perimeter shooting, especially at the guard position. And that's something that they don't have to worry about no more. They did give up some of their depth, but those guys are replaceable type players. And the second round pick isn't that bad because JJ Redick will probably be better than any second round pick that you can possibly get in that draft because he is still under contract. Next trade, Clippers acquire Rajon Rondo for Lou Williams. I was a little surprised about this because Lou wasn't playing much, and everybody kept saying they needed Rondo, they needed a point guard. Well, now it's finally reality. They now have that point guard. They now have playoff Rondo as it's almost that time, and he is a guy that has upped his scoring, upped his 3-point shooting as he takes more, and he is more aggressive than he was when he was with the Celtics when they was winning titles. But this is the trade. The Los Angeles Clippers have agreed to acquire Rondo from the Atlanta Hawks for Lou Williams and 2 second-round picks in cash. The Clippers had interest in signing Rondo last offseason, but he signed with the Atlanta Hawks instead. And Williams obviously played for the Atlanta Hawks before, and he was a good player for them then. And he gives them an offensive punch and another guy that can handle the ball, play different positions as a playmaker or a scorer. And, the Hawks have been on offense, and Rondo hasn't done much for them this year. And at least Lou Williams, what he is, what he brings to the table, and that he's going to get buckets. It is a little bit of a lot to give up 2 second-round picks, but you had to pay the cost for trying to get off Lou Williams' contract. I don't think he's a terrible fit for the Clippers. He just never really fit well with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard because they are guys that like to have the ball in their hands and they like to get to their spots, and so does Lou Williams. And at least Rondo can run the offense and set people up and get people their shot. So Kawhi Leonard and Paul George don't have to work and do as much offensively, and that just gives them another chink in the armor when it comes to their play style. And now that's null and void as Rondo will now come in and play that position. And like I said, he is more aggressive than the previous Rondos that we have seen. Um, Also, they still do have Batum too, who has been a decent pick up for them. Next, the Blazers acquired Norman Powell from the Raptors for Gary Trent and Rodney Hood. I was a little surprised about this because I was surprised about this because the Blazers really liked it, Gary Trent, and they really liked it, Rodney Hood. Obviously, Powell is on an aspiring contract and he is having the best season of his career. It does make sense for the Raptors to get off that contract because they will be having to be a team that will have to trade for him. I mean, sign him and give him the money, or they will lose him for basically nothing. Plus, the Raptors are still trying to make the playoffs this year. And they now have depth at the wing and at the guard position. These are guys that can play off the ball. These are guys that can knock down some perimeter shots outside of threes. And Hood is a guy that re-signed on a 2-year, $21 million deal. And now they get off that contract because Powell will be a free agent. If they like him and if he plays well, you can re-sign him. If he doesn't, you can let him go and go in a different direction. And that's an option that the Blazers have now. Gary Trent, I was a little surprised because he fit well with the team. He fit well with CJ, and he did fit well with Dame and played well with them. But obviously, they found a upgrade that they needed, so they got rid of two guys to get one that can do basically what they both do. It's just Norman Powell has a different mentality now that he's in the contract season, and maybe the Blazers can benefit from that and possibly re-sign him or go in a different direction in the offseason. Next, the Nuggets acquire Aaron Gordon from the Magic for R.J. Hampton, Gary Harris, and honestly, they gave up a first-round pick. They had to eventually move on Gary Harris as he never really became that two that they needed him to be. He showed potential of being a great three-point shooter with a potential of possibly being an all-star, and he never reached that potential or even came close to it as he declined, especially after having injury-riddled seasons and never really finding his jump shot the way they needed him to do to fit with Murray and Jokic and Porter. But now they have Aaron Gordon to come in, a guy that is a solid defender, a solid rebounder, and a guy that's switchable. And that's something that they had with Jeremy Grant, but he ended up going to Detroit. And it's something that they have now. And Aaron Gordon can also become a free agent in 2022. So if it doesn't work out, they're not locked into it. And they do have some time to play around with them to see will he fit, how to best use him, and see if he can really bring some umph in his career as he's been lacking in that regard so far the last 2 to 3 years. So to me, RJ Hampton, it was a little surprise, but obviously you want to pick up a young player with potential if you're trading a young guy like Aaron Gordon. But they also did get a first round pick too. So they got the first round pick to me because they had to add Gary Harris, and Gary Harris is a bad contract right now because he hasn't been a great player for multiple years. So you have to find a way to give up young talent in the pick to get Aaron Gordon, but you do also get off a contract that not too many teams want. And Gary Clark also has been pretty solid. He's a respectable guy, so he might not get much playing time, but he does give him another wing, another lanky, mobile guy that can do some stuff if he get the playing time and has potential, but not a guy that probably going to get a lot of time as Denver know who they guys are. They know who they're going to give the minutes to, and they know who they're going to go to war with. And I don't know if Gary Clark is going to crack significant minutes in a rotation, but Aaron Gordon gives them a little bit of what they was missing with Grant. But he also has potential still as a versatile forward that can guard and play multiple positions and possibly even can stretch the floor if his three-point shot comes around. So he has upside, he has potential. We'll see what he does with a fresh start. The Raptors also trade Terrence Davis to the Kings for a second round pick. So Terrence Davis was a guy that they was trying to develop and try to see if he can become something more than just a potential NBA player. And now they cash him in for a second round pick. That saves them money because obviously they getting off the Terrence Davis contract and they can get the pick. It makes sense for the Kings. They looking for guys that can help them now that still has potential in the future. And you can get that with a second round pick, but you already know what you're getting with Davis and he still has upside. And this is another roster spot that basically opens up for the Raptors so that way they can add to their team and add to their playoff push. The Bulls will also acquire Nikola Vucevic from the Magic for Wendell Carter and 2 first-round picks, I believe. That's amazing to get that type of haul for a guy like Vucevic, who is an all-star caliber player and was named the All-Star this year. Al-Farouq Aminu to me would just throw in salary because I don't really see him getting major minutes because he still cannot space the floor and he still don't have great enough offense to warrant getting huge minutes. Otto Porter never really worked out for the Chicago Bulls. He sounded good on paper as an elite sharpshooter, but that never came around as his defense never became elite and his three-point shooting never was what it was in Washington, really, and that made him more of a disappointment. I was liking Wendell Carter, but the offense never came around for him, and that's something that they don't have to worry about anymore, as they now have Vucevic, who is a 20 and 10 guy that can space the floor, post up, hit mid range, and also can set dribble handoffs and get space for guys like Zach LaVine and Kobe White to get open shots and make their shots easier because he can clog up the paint but also set screens to give them chances to get better looks, which they do need because they have to work a lot harder to get their buckets. And hopefully Vucevic can add that versatility and that space, and that should help make their jobs easier on the perimeter. The Magic are now obviously going into a rebuild phase, which they should have been did because they have no real superstars. And Vucevic was leading them to the playoffs, but he wasn't leading them no further than that. And to me, that's good for them to go in a different direction. Now, Chicago, like I said, the Pacific picks are they will be sending the 2021 and the 2023 picks, and they are first round. But I will also say the 2021 draft pick is protected in the top four, so keep that in mind. They are giving up a pretty good pick, or two of them. So, that is a big difference for the Magic, who are trying to, get a superstar that can really change their team in the future. The biggest problem I have with the Magic is their development. They haven't been developing guys the way they need to if they want to become a championship team. They just don't have the workers. They just don't have it. They have so many guys with potential, so many guys that could be this, could be that, but every time they draft them, they just never become what they're supposed to be or never become what we think they should be when they're drafted and play with the Magic. So hopefully they learn from their past and learn from their mistakes and really try to get the best out of the young guys that they're getting from this trade, but also the picks that they get now for being bad and also in the future and also from the Chicago Bulls. So hopefully their development can be better. The Hornets acquired Brad Wanamaker from the Warriors. Wanamaker signed a 1-year deal with the Warriors. Obviously, they wanted to cut him because he didn't play that great for them. They thought that he could be a difference maker, and that obviously didn't happen. And this allows them to get off his salary. And the Hornets basically gave up nothing. They just said, we'll take them from you. We can use them, especially because LaMelo Ball is out. And this guy is a rotation player. He's a solid player that can come in, be an 8th, 9th, 10th guy, make some shots, make some plays within 10 to 15 minutes, sometimes 20. And, for $2 million, that's not that bad of a deal for the Charlotte Hornets. Um, the Cleveland Cavaliers was not able to trade Andre Drummond, which is unfortunate, but they will now work on a buyout. The Kings will also get rid of Jabari Parker. He did not make the cut going into trade deadline, so they had to cut him because nobody really wanted him. The Pacers also finally waived Jalen LeCue. He did not, make it throughout the whole season like I thought he wouldn't. The Bulls will also trade for Daniel Tice from the Celtics. Tice hasn't been a great player. He has been a solid starter, but never was the player that we needed him to be at the center position. Not the greatest offensive player, not the greatest defender, but just was a solid starter. And I think the Bulls get a solid role player for basically nothing. And the Celtics are fine with that. The Warriors will also get rid of Marquise Chris. Marquise Chris pretty much hasn't really done much for a while for the Warriors, and they're looking to save as much money as they can as they're trying to go into playoff mode. If they fail to make the playoffs, they get a lottery pick most likely. But even if they don't, they get Clay back, so they fine with getting rid of role players that is not going to have much of an impact, as they now have Wiseman and other guys to take that spot from Chris. The Raptors trade Matt Thomas to the Jazz for a second round pick. That just money cost. They just got rid of Matt Thomas to get an open roster spot and cut some cash by giving him a second round pick to get off the contract and open up a roster spot for somebody else. Other than that, no other big trades was made. We can also talk about the Sixers acquiring George Hill from the Thunder. That's a huge thing because George Hill is a solid impact player still, being a guy that can, play off the ball, handle the ball, and defend multiple positions. I think that that's important in today's league, and that's something that George Hill definitely can do. And also, you would be happy if you're George Hill because you go from one of the worst teams to going to a team that's the number one team in the East and you have a chance to possibly win a championship. They didn't get Kyle Lowry, but they didn't get a bad player. So I think George Hill will be a bigger deal than people think. And he is, a good second, third option if you couldn't get Lowry, who was your number one. The Heat also agreed to acquire Bielisa from the Kings. That's a solid role player that can be, a eighth, ninth, tenth guy that can play multiple positions and also space the floor a little bit. The Wizards do trade Troy Brown, Mo Wagner to the Bulls for Daniel Gafford and Chandler Hutchison. I don't really care for Gafford. I don't really care for Chandler Hutchison. I think that those are rotation players at best. Um, if I be honest, I like Mo Wagner and Troy Brown better than them. But look at the reality of it. The Wizards are one of the worst teams in the league, and the Bulls are a team that's trying to make a playoff push this season. And that's why it makes sense for them to get rid of players that doesn't really fit well and play well for guys that can fit and do different things and bring more versatility to their team. And that's why they make this trade, to be honest. And the Celtics also was saying 2 second round picks to the Magic for Evan Fournier. That's a good upgrade because I feel like they needed another wing, they needed another handler, they needed another 3 point shooter because they lost Gordon Hayward for basically nothing. And Evan Fournier might not be the greatest player, might not be an all-star player, but he was better than what they had coming off the bench. And another guy that can, give you the ability to play Jason Tatum and Brown at other positions and allows you to go small while still giving you a lot of offensive upside, which this team has been lacking, is another punch, another scorer sometimes in their lineup or sometimes off the bench. Evan Fournier gives you that, and you only had to give up 2 second round picks for a starting caliber player. That's an amazing deal for the Celtics, and I think that it really does help them out. Now it's just about fitting them in, allowing him to find his groove while also doing his thing. And then we'll see if it works. If it don't, we can always let Evan Fournier walk. And I think that that'd be fine. Another thing that I will say, the Nuggets also acquired JaVale McGee from the Cavaliers. They needed a little bit more defense, especially at the big position. And we know that JaVale McGee might not be the smartest player, might not be the greatest player, but he is a guy that knows his role, plays his role, and he has helped teams win titles because his effort, his energy, and sometimes good defense from time to time. And that's what you're getting from the Cavaliers, a team that wasn't even playing them really, wasn't even using them. And the Nuggets are a team that can use them. And he can be a guy that can get 10 to 15 minutes. And he is a guy that can allow them to go big. And that was something that they really couldn't do consistently. And that's something that they can do now that they got JaVale McGee. So I would definitely say the Kings acquired DeLon Wright from the Pistons for Corey Joseph and 2 second round picks. Corey Joseph didn't really work out well for the Kings. He never really became that mentor. He never really became that backup that was a difference maker that they thought that they would be getting when they signed him a couple years ago. And the fact that you get rid of Corey Joseph in 2 second-round picks, and DeLon Wright, this is a move that you're getting a veteran that can guard and also be an offensive punch. But I think DeLon Wright is better than Corey Joseph. But would I give up Corey Joseph in 2 second-rounders? I don't know if I'll do that for DeLon Wright. But I do think that Corey Joseph played so bad and wasn't a good fit so bad that they had to find a way to get off his contract and get something decent in return. And that's why they had to add the picks in there to get that deal done. But DeLon Wright has been pretty solid for the NBA and for the teams he have played for. Been a little inconsistent, but so has Corey Joseph, and he gives you a position of need, and you get rid of a player that hasn't really done well for you. So that makes sense for them. Another thing, Lonzo did not get traded. Bledsoe also did not get traded. And, like we said, Kyle Lowry did not get traded either. So hopefully you guys enjoy my analysis. I know it's different. I know it's long. I know it's a whole lot of stuff to cover, but we got it done before 30 minutes. So I think that you guys will love it and enjoy it. Hopefully you guys um, like my analysis on this trade deadline. This would have took forever to edit. This would have took forever to make several videos over and over and over and over and over again to cover every single trade that happened today. But a lot of teams got a lot better. A lot of teams wanted to get off contracts, and a lot of teams wanted to go from trying to make the playoffs to rebuilding or trying to get off contracts that they thought will work and for a fresh start with somebody else that might work. And that's what you have to do. You have to find what works and what don't work. Who works, who don't work, who fits it, who don't fit. And that's why you got to like moves what Miami did to show that they're not giving up on winning the title. You got like moves what Denver did. They have been pretty decent, but they haven't been great or amazing. And this is a team that we looked at as a team that can win the title because last year they was in the Western Conference Finals, and this year they've been decent at best. And these moves shows you that they're not complacent. They still feel like they want to push and push with this Jokic-led team. And he's in the MVP conversation, but the team hasn't been amazing, so they found ways to make moves to shake some things up and give them a different look. And maybe that can be the thing that they need to do to get to heights that they haven't reached so far, or even give them potential to reach them in the future with a different look. So other than that, let me know what you like, what you don't like. Have fun today. This was exciting. It was just my phone was just going crazy, seeing all these moves being made and wondering how guys will fit and wondering what teams got better, wondering who's going to come out the West, wondering who's going to get traded, wondering who's going to come out the East. And it was just a fun day. Other than that, enjoy all day. Quinn Wade, basketball analysis. I'm gone, and I'll be back with another video tomorrow.